Akan selalu mencari.
Normal.
A woman suddenly receives news that her elderly parents have fallen seriously ill. Back home, she decides to travel with her children to their old family house, a place they haven't visited in many years. But something feels deeply wrong. The pale faces of her parents, their hollow expressions, and their sudden strange smiles send chills down everyone's spine. Then, in the middle of the night, the old couple disappears, slipping away into the darkness as if they were never there. What is going on here? Are these people even human? Slowly, the family begins to realize the terrifying truth. They were lured here to serve as offerings to the devil. Jealousy, revenge, and dark magic. This is the story of Kafir Garbang Sukma. Today, I'm going to be explaining the Indonesian horror movie Kafir Garbang Sukma. And before we get into it, I want to let you know, this is not the first part of the story. There is another movie that serves as the prequel to this one. But don't worry, you don't need to watch that first film to understand what's happening here. I've explained everything in a way that makes this video completely self-contained. So sit back, because by the end of this video, everything will be crystal clear. How's everyone doing? I'm Alex, and I'll be with you throughout this entire video. You are watching Movie Vox Recap. So let's go, friends. Let's dive into this terrifying world. The story begins with a woman named Shri. We see her digging into the ground and placing a small cloth bundle inside it. Then she takes a snake, pops out its eyes, and drops them into the hole. She even cuts her own hand and lets the blood drip in as an offering. She is praying, hoping that this ritual, this talisman, will serve as a protective charm for her family and guard the walls of her home. Next, we meet her daughter Dina, who is studying hard at home. Her brother Andy comes in and starts teasing her. He says, "You're always buried in your law books. But shouldn't you be thinking about getting married by now?" You see, Dina wants to become a lawyer. She has been doing an unpaid internship at a law firm for months just to learn the trade. Andy then adds, "You could always come help me run Dad's business. You'd actually make money doing that." Dina shakes her head and says, "But then everything I've worked for all these years would be a waste, wouldn't it?" We also get a glimpse of Andy's wife, Rani, who is quietly serving food to everyone. Then their mother, Shri, arrives at the house and notices something troubling. The cloth bundle she had tied to the doorway now has about 5 black spots on it. According to her beliefs, this is a bad omen. It means danger may be approaching the family. Andy and Dina confront Shri and ask her why she's still doing these rituals after everything the family has been through. They say things seem fine now, so what's the point? Shri brushes it off and tells them it's nothing, just a precaution. At the dinner table, Shri looks at Rani and says, "You're looking a bit fuller these days. Are you pregnant?" Andy laughs it off and says, "No, Mom, she's just been eating more lately." Shri then says, "Well, don't be in too much of a rush for a child." This comment strikes Rani as odd. She wonders why her mother-in-law would say something like that, as if she doesn't want them to have a baby. After the meal, Dina and Andy go their separate ways, but Rani notices Shri staring at her stomach in a strange way. It makes her deeply uncomfortable, and she quietly retreats to her room. Meanwhile, Andy is managing his late father's paddy field business. After his father passed away, he stepped up to handle everything. The farm worker gives him an update. The crops are doing better now, though they had some issues earlier with weeds bringing down the quality. On the other side of town, we see Shri visiting a local spiritual healer, a man named Kiai. This is the same healer who gave her the protective charm for her home. Kiai greets her and says, "Why have you come? You shouldn't have any problems. The talisman I gave you is in your home's courtyard. Nothing and no one can enter that house while it's there. So why are you here?" Shri says, "I just feel uneasy. Something inside me says something bad is about to happen." And right at that moment, back at their paddy fields, fire breaks out. And inside the house, the framed photo of Andy's grandparents falls off the wall in front of Rani. When Shri returns home and sees what happened, she starts desperately trying to call her parents. But the hours pass and the calls never connect. Night falls and she still can't reach them. Her aunt calls her for dinner, but she can't eat. She's consumed by worry. Next morning, Shri goes to her parents' house to check on them. The front door is open. She steps inside and notices what looks like blood on the floor. Then from the bedroom, she hears a sound. She walks toward it and enters the room, and what she finds there is horrifying. Her mother lies in the bed, brutally killed. Then the wardrobe swings open, and out stumbles her father with a massive axe buried in his head. She stumbles backwards in pure terror. And then her mother grabs her from behind. She wakes up. It was a nightmare, nothing more. The next day, Andy and Rani visit the hospital for an ultrasound. The results come back and confirm that Rani is 2 months pregnant. They are overjoyed. On the drive home, Andy says, "When we tell Mom about this, she'll be so happy, her first grandchild." But as they pass a crossroads, Andy notices a girl dressed entirely in black standing there motionless. It unsettles him deeply. When they get home, They're about to share the news with Shri when Dina stops them. She says, I can tell what you want to say, but now is not the right time. Grandpa just called. Mom's parents are not doing well. We need to go see them. And so the entire family packs up and heads to the grandparents' house. Back at Shri's home, something ominous happens. The protective talisman she had hung on the door falls to the ground, and it begins to fill up with black spots one after another. This can only mean one thing. Something terrible is coming. When they arrive, their grandfather meets them at the door. Their grandmother is standing inside waiting. Grandpa says warmly, You've come after so long. Come in, freshen up. I'm sure you've all missed your grandmother's cooking, haven't you? But Shri looks at her parents closely and they don't seem sick at all. She pulls her mother aside and says, Mom, if you're unwell, please don't hide it from me. Tell me everything. Her mother waves it away and says, Oh, I'm not as sick as your father made it sound. We just missed you and the grandchildren, so we called you over. When Shri goes to tidy up the table, the tea and snacks sitting there, she notices a foul, stale smell, as if everything had been sitting there for days. She walks into the kitchen and the others follow, but the smell is unbearable. Every piece of food in the kitchen is rotting, visibly, horribly decayed. And strangest of all, the grandmother is standing at the stove trying to cook, but she has forgotten to even turn on the gas. Shri looks at all of this and sighs. She says, They're getting very old. I should have come sooner. She gently tells her mother, Go rest, Mom. You don't need to do anything. I'll cook for everyone. Shri and Dina then begin cleaning up the kitchen. It's a complete mess. Everything has gone bad. The fridge is crawling with insects. The grandmother looks at Andy and says, Who are you? Andy just smiles and says, I'm your grandson, Andy. But the look on her face tells him, old age has fully taken hold of them. Ronnie, who wasn't feeling well because of the pregnancy, feels even more nauseous from the smell. Trying to take out the trash, Dina spots a cat outside. She's always been fond of animals, so she crouches down and starts petting it. Suddenly, a noise comes from an old abandoned room nearby. She walks to the door and tries to enter, but it won't open. She calls out, Grandpa, are you in there? The grandfather cracks the door open just a sliver and says, I'm here. You don't need to come in. It's very messy inside. At dinner that night, Andy is reminiscing cheerfully. He says, When we were kids, we used to play hide and seek here all the time. I once climbed inside a wardrobe and fell asleep. Everyone panicked looking for me. Everyone at the table bursts out laughing. Everyone except the grandparents. And then, when the laughter finally dies down, the two elderly people suddenly begin to laugh together, but in a way that no normal human being would laugh. It was unsettling, and everyone at the table felt it. Before bed, Shri quietly tells Dina, I want to bring your grandparents home with us. Someone needs to be watching over them at all times. Dina agrees and says, That would be good, Mom. They'd be right in front of us every day. That night, something deeply strange happens. The grandparents' bodies slowly begin to levitate, rising off the bed into the air. Meanwhile, Ronnie wakes up because she's thirsty. She goes to the kitchen to get some water and catches a glimpse of the grandmother walking somewhere. She follows her, but the grandmother doesn't respond to her calls at all and walks straight out of the house. Then the grandfather appears from behind and grabs Ronnie's arm. He says, What are you doing up at this hour? Go to sleep. Your grandmother has a habit of sleepwalking. Don't worry, I'll go bring her back. But when Ronnie turns and goes back inside, the grandfather doesn't bring the grandmother back at all. Instead, he leads her deeper into the darkness. The next morning, Dina is searching everywhere for her cat, the one she'd been petting the evening before. She's genuinely worried. Meanwhile, Shri goes to the bathroom and finds a used period pad covered in blood. She brings it up with Dina and asks, Are you on your period right now? Dina says no. Then Shri laughs lightly and says, Maybe it's Ronnie's then. But we know Ronnie is 2 months pregnant. That's simply impossible. Dina knows this too. So how did this get here? Then the grandfather steps out of the house carrying a large axe. Shri asks him, Father, where are you going? He replies calmly, Into the woods. I need to chop some firewood. Meanwhile, Andy decides to take Ronnie out for a little walk around the area, since she's been feeling restless. Dina, still looking for her cat, notices her grandfather walking into the woods with the axe. She calls out to him from behind, again and again, but he doesn't turn around, doesn't respond, just keeps walking. At some point, she trips and falls, and when she gets up, her grandfather has simply vanished. As Andy and Ronnie wander around, they find a quiet spot beside a lake and sit down. Ronnie looks at Andy and says, I've never really asked you this before, but you once mentioned your father died because of black magic. I want to know everything. Andy takes a deep breath and says, You have every right to know as my wife. It's my responsibility to tell you everything. But promise me, no matter what you hear about my family or my past, your feelings for me won't change. Ronnie gives him her word, and Andy begins to tell the story. He says, Before my mother Shri was married, she had 2 very close friends. One was a woman named Layla, and the other was a man named Harmon. Harmon is the person who later became my father. My mother was deeply in love with him, but kept it to herself. But Harmon chose Layla. Layla loved him back just as deeply, and my mother simply could not accept it. She couldn't bear the thought that Harmon would marry Layla instead of her, so she turned to black magic. She visited a sorcerer named Jaro, and through dark magic, she pulled Harmon away from Layla and made him her husband. But what came to light later was that Layla had already gotten pregnant by Harmon before all of this happened. She pleaded with my mother not to do this, not to take Harmon from her, but my mother didn't listen. The village eventually drove Layla out for being pregnant without being married. Then 20 years passed, and Layla came back, carrying a curse of black magic driven by vengeance, coming to settle old scores. Through dark powers, she killed my father. And she was about to kill me, my sister, and my mother too. But somehow we survived. She and her daughter Hanum ended up dead. I set fire to them myself to save us. And Hanum, Andy pauses, was someone I had once been in a relationship with. I didn't know who she really was. I didn't know she was Layla's daughter, my stepsister. She had used our relationship only as a way to get close to us, to get inside our home, to destroy our family. But I stopped it. And after that, I started my new life with you. Now, friends, what Andy just described to Ronnie is exactly what was shown in the first part of this movie. And this film summarizes all of it beautifully so you understand the full picture. But now, as they head back from the lake, Andy spots something on a distant hillside. Among a group of hikers, he catches a glimpse of someone who looks exactly like Hanum. Ronnie sees nothing, but Andy is deeply shaken inside. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Dina finally finds her grandfather, and what she sees there terrifies her. He is completely unclothed, using an axe to violently hack apart an animal. She gasps and makes a sound. The grandfather snaps his head toward her. Dina realizes immediately she needs to get out of there. She runs, but he has already seen her. Back at the house, as Shri walks past the kitchen, she overhears her mother stirring something at the stove and whispering to herself. The words she hears are, "Under the full moon, the dead will rise. Under the full moon, the dead will rise." Shri steps closer to investigate. And at that exact moment, Dina rushes back from the woods, and then the grandmother lifts the lid off the pot and pulls out Dina's beloved cat, dead, fully cooked, and she announces to everyone that she prepared it for dinner as a special meal. Later, while giving her elderly mother a bath, Shri sees something that disturbs her deeply. Her mother's back is covered in strange, old wounds and scars that look deeply unnatural. Dina goes outside to bury the body of her cat. When she looks up, she sees her grandfather emerging from the forest, carrying something in a bag and heading into that abandoned room. She goes to confront him, and he walks out of the room and acts as though he never saw her following him, as if nothing happened. At night, Dina tells her, "Mom, doesn't the way Grandpa and Grandma are behaving seem strange to you? Is something bad going to happen to us again?" But Shri shuts it down. She says, "Stop bringing up old things. They're just getting old. That's all it is." That same night, as Andy and Ronnie lie in bed, Ronnie whispers to him, "Don't worry. After learning everything about your past, my feelings for you haven't changed at all." But when Andy turns to look at her, it's not Ronnie's face. He sees Hanum. He recoils in fear and turns away quickly. And when he looks again, it's Ronnie. He knows what he saw, but his mind won't let him accept it as just a hallucination. It felt completely real. That night, a sound wakes Dina up. She steps outside and hears it again, that same whispering about the dead rising under the full moon. Then a figure rushes past her in the dark and disappears into the abandoned room. From inside, she can hear chanting. She tries the door, it's locked from within. She searches for any crack or gap in the wall to look through and finally finds one. She peers inside and sees her grandfather kneeling before something, performing what looks like a dark ritual. And then she sees it. Through the narrow gap, the grandfather is eating raw meat, the flesh of the goats that had been slaughtered in the forest. Suddenly, the grandfather senses someone watching him. Dina knows she has to go now. She turns to run and walks straight into her grandfather, standing in front of her, axe in hand. She cries out, "Grandpa, it's me." It's Dina. But there is something in those eyes that is not her grandfather. She manages to dash into the house and slam the door shut. It shakes violently as something pounds on it from outside. And then silence. She cautiously peers out, nothing there. But when she turns around, her grandfather is standing right behind her, inside the house, calmly saying, "Dina, why are you up so late? Go to sleep." It made no sense at all. Then that same night, Ronnie wakes up and finds her grandmother standing right beside the bed, staring down at her and slowly reaching out to touch her belly. Ronnie cannot move, cannot scream. Her entire body has gone completely numb with fear. The next morning, Dina tells her mother everything, but Shri still refuses to believe it. Ronnie goes to Andy and says, "I cannot stay here anymore. Something is very wrong with your grandparents." But Andy says, "How can we just leave them behind? Nobody is believing Ronnie or Dina. Ronnie then confides in Dina, and they talk together. A man from the local mosque committee arrives at the gate and hands Shri a letter. He says the mosque donations haven't been paid in 2 months and asks if the owner of the house has returned. Shri says, of course they're here. They're old people, they live here. But the man says, I've come several times and every time all the windows were shut tight and no one was home. This shakes Shri. She goes immediately to check her parents' room. They're not there. She searches the entire house. They are nowhere to be found. Dina tells her, I saw Grandpa going deep into the woods. Could they have gone back there? And so they all head into the forest to look. What they find when they get there destroys them. Scattered across the ground are dozens of rotting goat carcasses, all of them headless. The stench is overwhelming. Ronnie runs off to be sick. Andy looks at Dina and says, Did Grandpa really do all this? Dina says, I saw it with my own eyes. A common detail across all these carcasses, not a single head among them. All the heads had been taken for use in something else. While Ronnie is throwing up, she notices an eerie figure standing nearby, a strangely dressed man watching them. But the moment Andy comes over, the figure vanishes. After a long day of searching the jungle, the family returns home exhausted at dusk and is stunned to see the lights on inside the house. Someone is home. They go in and find the grandparents dancing together in the living room, waltzing around as if nothing had happened. They are shocked and confused. After helping to clean the mud from their feet and asking repeatedly where they went, the grandparents say nothing. The grandmother takes Ronnie's hand and asks softly, How are you feeling, dear? It has been such a tough day. You really shouldn't be pushing yourself right now, not with a baby in your belly. Shri hears this and says quickly, Mom, she doesn't have a baby. The grandmother says, I know. And then Shri turns to Ronnie and asks directly, Are you pregnant? And Andy finally tells his mother, Mom, I was going to tell you, just not at the right time. Shri's reaction shocks everyone. She becomes visibly upset, reacting in a way that is completely inappropriate for the news of her first grandchild. Ronnie begins to cry, and even Andy can't understand it. Why would his mother not be happy? Andy goes to the bathroom to splash water on his face, and when he looks up, Hanum appears in the mirror behind him. She says to him mockingly, Your own mother doesn't want your child. How painful. Then she laughs and vanishes, walking back out. Andy notices that his grandparents' bedroom door has swung open, and through the window from inside, he can see light coming from that abandoned room. He goes there, tries the door, it's locked. So he looks through a gap in the wood and sees his grandparents inside together, worshipping something in a ritual. And in the next moment, his eyes fall on something even more disturbing. They are eating the raw flesh of the goats from the jungle. Andy makes a small noise and quickly slips away before being seen. That night, as Shri sleeps, someone grabs her from behind. She freezes. It is her dead husband, Harman. His voice is cold and accusatory, telling her over and over that everything happening is her fault and that she will face the consequences. She cries out for Dina, who is sleeping beside her. Dina stirs and sits up, but it is not Dina. It is her dead best friend, Layla. The next morning, Dina wakes to find a note on the table. It reads, Dina, I have something important I need to take care of. I've taken Andy's car and gone out. Don't worry. We see Shri driving away, and blood is beginning to drip from her nose. Back at the house, Dina, Andy, and Ronnie sit together and begin piecing things together. Ronnie says, When we were in the jungle, I saw a strangely dressed man hiding among the trees. Dina asks her to describe him and immediately recognizes who it was. The sorcerer Jaro. Ronnie says, But isn't he dead? Dina says, He did die. But Layla made a deal with the devil and brought him back to life. Andy says, I keep seeing Hanum's ghost everywhere, because as far as they all know, both Hanum and Layla died in the fire. At that moment, the grandmother appears and calls them in for a special meal she supposedly prepared. As they sit eating, not really wanting to, the truth is slowly assembling itself. Meanwhile, Shri has driven all the way to the home of the healer Ki, the same one who gave her the protective talisman at the beginning of the story. She tells him everything. She says, My daughter-in-law is 2 months pregnant. What do I do? How do I stop this? Ki says gravely, This is not simple. Those who serve the devil and then try to turn away, the devil despises them with a fury you cannot imagine. Shri says, I know, but I want to pay for my own sins. I don't want my family to suffer for what I did. Ki then asks, Why has the protection on your home been broken? Did you leave your house? Shri says yes, that she came because her parents were supposedly sick. Ki says solemnly, You did not understand. That was the devil's trick. Those people at that house, they are not your parents. Ki then fills a bowl of water and places a mirror over it and begins to chant, trying to find some way to help Shri. But then, in the reflection of the mirror, The soul of Jaro the sorcerer appears. It stares directly at Shri and says, "The time for you to pay has finally come." And then the mirror shatters, and all the shards fly into Kiai's mouth, tearing him apart from the inside. Shri too begins to bleed. Before Kiai dies, he presses a small cloth bundle into Shri's hand and tells her to keep it close, that it will protect her in her time of need. Back at the grandparents' house, Andy heads to the abandoned room to find out what's inside. He breaks the lock open. Dina goes to the grandparents' bedroom to search for clues, and Ronnie is told to stay put. If anything goes wrong, just scream and we'll come running. Andy enters the room and follows the smell, a deep, putrid stench. And the smell leads him to the most horrifying thing he has ever seen. In a dark corner of the room are the real bodies of his grandparents, murdered. Someone had killed them brutally and left them there to rot. These old people they had been living with were never their grandparents at all. Meanwhile, inside the bedroom, Dina searches carefully. Under the bed, she finds a necklace that belonged to their grandfather. On the calendar on the wall, she notices that today's date, the 30th, is circled. And written next to it are two words, Garbang Sukma. The meaning is something like a gateway for souls, a door through which spirits can pass. And tonight is a full moon. Dina understands in her bones that something is going to happen tonight, but before she can do anything, she is knocked unconscious. And in that abandoned room, Andy is looking at a jar of medical ointment, the kind used for burns. What is that doing here? And then Hanum steps out of the shadows. She is alive. She looks directly at Andy and says, "Did you really think I was dead?" "I survived. My friend Selim saved me." Now friend Selim is Andy's own employee, the man who oversees the paddy fields. But Hanum reveals that Salim was actually a loyal spy working for her mother Layla all along. She says, "That night when you set fire to everything and walked away, I was still breathing. My mother died there, but I survived. Selim took care of me, nursed me back to health. Even though I wanted to die with my mother, these scars on my body, these burn marks, they wouldn't let me forget. They kept telling me, 'You must have revenge.' One day I was working at a hospital and I learned that your wife was 2 months pregnant. That was the day the plan was born. I decided I would never let you be happy. When Selim found out what I was planning, he threatened to go to the police. So I killed him, and we see it. After killing Salim, Hanum tears open his chest and eats his heart. Then she calls upon Jaro the sorcerer to help her carry out her plan. Jaro tells her, "I've tried to harm Shri's family, but I can't. She has protected her home through another healer's power." But Hanum replies, "Did you see? There is a 2-month-old baby growing inside Andy's wife's womb." And then we see something shift in Jaro's expression. A dark light enters his eyes. He says, "Then get them out of that house one way or another. And on the night of the full moon, I will bring your mother back to life." And this is where everything clicks into place. Hanum went to Shri's parents' house, killed them both brutally, and then used the devil's deception to lure Shri and her entire family out of their protected home, all to get revenge. Now hearing all of this, Andy is furious. He says, "How could you do this? If you wanted revenge, take it on me. But why did you kill my innocent grandparents?" Hanum just smiles. And then Jaro steps out from the shadows and strikes Andy unconscious. Shri arrives back at the house and finds it empty. She goes to her parents' room and looks up at the ceiling. The entire space looks like it has been transformed into another dimension entirely. And then she sees the calendar on the wall, the 30th circled, the words Garbang Sukma written beside it. She understands everything now. As out in the forest, Hanum has begun the ritual. A circle of goat heads surrounds the clearing. Jaro drags in a large pregnant cow. And Ronnie is lying unconscious in a bathtub. Andy and Dina have been bound and tied. Andy pleads desperately, "Let Ronnie go. She has done nothing wrong. Take me instead." But then Jaro reveals the darkest secret of all. He says, "Your mother must pay what she owes." When she used dark magic to take Harmon for herself all those years ago, she made a deal with the devil. And as everyone knows, the devil never works for free. He demanded a sacrifice. Shri refused to give her own children. So she promised that one day, when she had grandchildren, she would give one to the devil. And now that time has come. Now we understand everything. This is why Shri reacted so badly when she learned Ronnie was pregnant. It wasn't that she didn't want a grandchild. It was that she knew what this child would cost. Hanum says to everyone, "Tonight I will offer all of you to the devil as my revenge. And tonight I will bring my mother back." Andy begs and pleads, "Don't harm the baby, please." But Hanum says coldly, "What choice do I have? I need a pure soul to bring my mother back. And your 2-month-old baby is that soul." The full moon rises into the sky. Hanum presses her hands hard against Ronnie's stomach, forcing the embryo out. Jero kills the cow, and Hanum extracts the 2-month-old embryo from Ronnie's womb. And then, in an act of absolute horror, she consumes it. What Andy is forced to witness while tied up is beyond imagining. And then, without a sound, Shri appears. She unties Andy and Dina and whispers urgently, "Don't make a sound. Forgive me, please. I know this is all my fault. I should never have gone to the devil in the first place. I was wrong." At that very moment, the cow's belly splits open and out crawls a human figure, naked and covered in filth. It is Layla, resurrected. Hanum rushes to her mother, wraps a cloth around her and holds her close, sobbing, "Mom, I did it. I brought you back." And then Shri makes her choice. She says quietly, "I made this mess and I have to clean it up. I have suffered enough. Now it ends." She takes a canister of kerosene and pours it over herself. Then she throws the contents of Kiai's protective bundle directly at Jaro. The moment it hits him, his power begins to drain. He weakens. And before he can recover, Shri drives a knife through him and ends him. Dina screams and tries to grab her mother, crying, "Mom, don't do this. We have no one but you." But Shri doesn't stop. She is already burning. She runs straight at Layla, wraps her flaming arms around her and pulls her close. And the last words she says are, "I'll see you properly in hell. Now let's die together." And right there in front of their eyes, both women burn down to nothing. Hanum screams in anguish. She had worked so hard, suffered so much just to bring her mother back. And now she is gone again. She turns toward Ronnie with murderous rage in her eyes. But Andy has had enough. In a blinding fury, he grabs a stone and goes at Hanum, beating her again and again until she is completely and utterly gone. And somehow, the three of them, Andy, Dina, and Ronnie, make it back to the house. And that is how this movie ends.